Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charlotte Davis. I'm on GMA's governmental relations team, and I work on state level advocacy at our General Assembly here in Georgia. I work closely with Todd Edwards, my colleague at ACCG. He regrets, unfortunately, he isn't able to join us this afternoon, but wanted me to tell for the county folks in the audience that he appreciates you being here. And I appreciate the County Association for partnering with GMA on this issue, because it really isn't just a city-specific issue when it comes to right-of-way and small cells. It's really a local government issue, and that's certainly how we've couched it to the General Assembly. And it's we really think that we're much stronger together on this, because between city and counties, we have the most amount of right-of-way in our state. And they're of high interest to our telecom industry right now, and they're very valuable assets. So I want to tell you a little bit about some specific legislation that we dealt with last session, completely dealing with local authority over the right-of-way. If you saw any newsletters or communication from either one of our associations, I'm confident in saying that you probably know a lot about small cells at this point, just because we sent out so much communication. We worked so hard on this issue all session long, really hand in hand. And so a lot of the proposals that we saw last session at the General Assembly were very preemptive in nature over local governing of the right-of-way. And when I mean that, not only for the placement of the nice, pretty, shiny small cells, that the Internet of Things and all the emerging technologies, those sorts of things. So we are mindful about that. But it takes a lot of infrastructure to support a small cell, right? There are a lot of new poles and fiber, boxes, equipment that still have to be deployed. Our own legislators here in Georgia were being told, and that they were making themselves, whether it's our permitting or our fee structure or just, it's not necessarily a fair characteristic at all. I think not a lot of our local governments have much experience so far working with this area, but that doesn't mean that they won't be, or they're not equipped to get there in the future. So we made the arguments, like I said, all throughout session, that if we're going to deploy new technologies, their local government has to have some authority over where the placement of new poles go. Right-of-ways are already so crowded. There are already so many users of the right-of-way. And this new emerging wireless technology is different, really, in a lot of ways, but certainly different in that it's not a utility. It's not the same as your electricity, your water, your sewer. It's not even the same as your cable. And there are a couple of reasons for that, but wireless technology is not regulated by our Public Service Commission here in Georgia like the electricity. You know, when AT&T or Verizon or any wireless company comes in and deploys a wireless type of technology, they don't have to serve the same ways that Georgia Power does. They are allowed to deny certain districts or certain jurisdictions if it doesn't fit their cost model. Thankfully, you know, Georgia Power isn't allowed to do that, and that's how we have electricity all over our state, and the same, of course, for our nation. So we kind of tried to really stick to those arguments and say this is also a huge public safety issue. You know, these new 50-foot poles that could be going in to support nothing but a small cell. Obviously, with distracted driving, you already have so many users of the right-of-way, pedestrians, cyclists, whatever. You can see how it can be a problem for a downtown area. And then, of course, and you've spent a lot of money and time developing your downtown areas and making them particular to your own community. So we weren't supporting standards and aesthetics just to get out their technology that wouldn't necessarily mean they serve the entire community. So fast forward, here we are to the end of the session. Thankfully, legislators at the Capitol were sympathetic to our arguments, and largely because of our city and county officials really reaching out to them and expressing a lot of these concerns. And they said, cities and counties, local governments, more of a compromise. And we really took that to heart. And we've been working GMA alongside ACCG and the wireless industry, as well as our other partners and stakeholders like our electric cities, MEAG, EMCs, other co-ops in the state who are their own electric or service providers. I've really been working on a legislative compromise. Every 2 weeks, we've been meeting with them and hashing out all the various issues you could possibly think about around this issue, because it is really technical and there are a lot of moving parts to it. And we really feel like we're getting closer. And that'll be much more reflective, like I said, of a compromise come 2019, if the General Assembly just still has the appetite for passing small cell legislation federal level. For the purposes here in Georgia, we've been asked a lot, obviously, and our attorneys have too, in that Georgia's still going to need small cell legislation given the federal preemption. And the wireless industry says, yes, it does mean that, some type of legislation is most likely to pass. So we want it to obviously be as local government friendly as possible. So really where we're at, because we do want this new technology ultimately, and it's how we move a lot of the economic development and investment that's been made in Atlanta, how we move that out connectivity. We're willing to compromise in a lot of areas on permitting or really incentivizing co-location of the small cells and where they might go, whether it's on existing infrastructure or maybe a building or something of that nature, where there isn't necessarily a new pole being put in every 50 to 100 feet to support this type of technology. So that's really the first thing. On the second, as I had mentioned, is just having a greater discretionary review process, having more local authority, and ensuring that in every step of the way, if a wireless industry wants to put in a 50-foot pole, and certainly hopefully not in a historic district, but if they do or in a residential area, what are the safeguards that are going to ensure that that can look like home, but maybe on the edge of a property line or somewhere on the edge of the residential area that's a little bit more appropriate, but can still meet the needs of the wireless industry to get out the service that they need. So that's sort of where we're at right now, and have been meeting. These workshops have been extremely helpful, talking to city and county officials about these issues. And of course, our staff has been all over and been meeting with legislators, the House Rural Development Council. The Senate has an emerging technologies and right-of-way study committee that we've been able to testify at and bring material to them. So it's still a very relevant topic, and we're certainly doing our homework and talking to the right folks. So it's hopeful that they will be supportive of us once session starts back here in January. So I want to show you this map real quick. This is actually not I think this was from a week ago, but it's already been updated even more. The numbers are different now. But what this is, it's a placement map of the city of Atlanta inside 285. Much different maybe than here in Macon, of course, but every one of those little dots, which is 708 right now, I think it's close to 800 in Atlanta, top of poles, or it's a brand new pole that supports one of those small cells. Now they're not serving 5G technology now, but they will. They're 5G compatible. So when that way, and I imagine you try to stay as far away from Atlanta as possible, or maybe you're familiar with it and go a lot. But either way, you certainly know how crowded it is. You know how many people are in the city. Cities can permit, and they can handle the density, and they can handle the requests because they are right now, and it hasn't taken legislation to do this. But this is the sort of investment that the wireless industry is most interested in making right now, because this is also where the most amount of their customers live. It's the greatest in rural broadband, and I'm glad to have our JBN consulting team here to talk more about the ACE Act, because that was a piece of legislation, 402, that we were incredibly supportive of, as was ACCG, because that's really targeted at the initiatives of rural broadband, and how can we equip state agencies and various stakeholders and local governments, get them to the table to talk about connectivity in the state. So that's obviously something we're interested in. But the small cell issue is, I see a component of that, but it's a supplement right now. It's not the same as rural broadband fix for the entire state. And this kind of shows you why, because it's enhancing a network that's already in place. And two, I think it's good to point out that out of all those permits the city has received, that only 8 have been denied. And I think that kind of cuts against the wireless industry's arguments that they can't get a permit through anywhere. Atlanta's the largest city. They handle tons of permits. And out of the hundreds, they've only had to turn down 8 and offer relocation. So that kind of sums up the small cell issue. I really appreciate y'all being here, and I just would encourage you to reach out if you have any questions. And certainly, I think like Becky mentioned, and I know Greg will echo as well, that if you receive at the city level, definitely probably want to reach out and get a second set of eyes on it if you're not certain of what it is. And we'd be more than happy to guide you through that. So now I'd like to call up both of our JBN consultants who are going to tell us a little bit more about the ACE Act.